So you are doing some research here.
Yeah, so Cam the intern
Got his own podcast.
got his own podcast, but it looks good.
Looks good. Logos, good
Maybe
graphics.
it sounds good too.
Oh, Cam, hardworking kid.
Cam?
Yeah.
Every day that kid's stock goes up a little
Doesn't
bit.
it?
A little bit.
Ryan, her three on the way. It's good off the backboard and in. Murray, what a take by Tucker. Jones, another steal. Spin on Caldwell, and the layup's good.
I would like to see you hold a mirror up to yourself and interview yourself. As good as this was, it could only be better if it was all you.
Tuning in, I was a fan. I was like, man, let's do it.
Cam, thanks so much for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Joined today for the first time, Cam Isimone. Gallagher's going to have to shoot it from beyond the arc. And it's good! Jacobs for three. He got it! My goodness, what a shooting performance by Jacobs.
I think Cam's Corner is great.
Tune in to Cam's Corner.
This kid's going to make it. He's going to make it here.
We are back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Cam's Corner. Today's joining me a very special guest, a man of many titles, from sports announcer, product manager, and podcaster as well, to Jake Zimmer. Jake, I appreciate you for taking the time, man. How you been?
Cam, thanks for having me. It's we are rapidly approaching the time of year, you're in college athletics, crossover season very well. It's going to be total mayhem in February. I've got a couple of exciting trips lined up, and some of them for personal, some of them going out on the trail in the pro lacrosse scene. So it's going to be crazy. We're going to blink and it's going to be May all of a sudden too, but thanks for having me on.
No, of course, my pleasure. And, I usually start off my interviews, like I was telling you, like starting off where these people like that I talk to found their love for what they do and the passion that they have. And I know, like, right now, obviously we'll get into a lot of the Bruins questions later. A lot of people definitely want to know about that, the new experience that you have as the PA announcer. But, to start, where are you from? And, where does that love for sports announcing stem from? Like, what was sports like for you growing up?
I grew up in a small town in Southern Connecticut, and I was a big baseball fan. I was not so great of a player. I thought I held my own up until middle school and high school, and it started getting really competitive. And I had realized as a 5'8" second baseman, that I don't want to say didn't work hard by any means, but, was just getting outplayed and stuff by a bunch of freak athletes in our division. I knew I was never going to make it as a college or professional player. So, you have to, in those situations, look around and say, all right, what else do I want to do really? And just got asked on another show, where did this start? How'd you get into the media side of sports? And I remember growing up, I would watch a lot of Yankees baseball where I grew up in Connecticut. Went to my first Yankee game in 2004. And one detail I vividly remember, besides the park being so big, I think that's every baseball fan's first reaction when you walk into a baseball stadium is, wow, this thing's huge. My first reaction was the voice coming from nowhere, right? And that happened to be the voice of God, Bob Shepard, they called him, who passed away about just over 10 years ago now. Couple that with the amount of TV that I watched for sports, watching Michael Kay and company do their thing on Yes Network. My dad had a radio in my room growing up as a kid. And, if I behaved and didn't cause any trouble in the house, I'd be able to listen to the end of most baseball games in there too. And that sort of stuck with me. It's what can I do to speak about sports and make a living off of it. Right. So those were the early days that love grew, tried a bunch of different things, really found a niche, I think. And I can trace it very vividly back to some of those early memories.
Right. And where did you go to college? Once you started to figure out this is the career path you were going to take. And, how did you get into everything that you wanted to get into, as far as programs? And because college, the venues and everything that they have, for me, at URI, being on ESPN Plus, as a student, it's a huge opportunity. So for you, what was that like at the college scene, and where did you go?
My college criteria was pretty simple. I knew that I wanted to get a business degree. I knew I wanted to set myself up for long-term success. Really wanted to go to Fordham. Didn't work out. Figured what better of a place to, that WFUV, so many people coming out of there, Jack Curry, Vince Scully, Michael Kay, all these, New York area and beyond folks that have had really good success in this business, as you know. Fordham didn't work out, so I had to start at square one again. I was down to Bryant and St. John's, and I found a bit more of a home at Bryant. I think I liked, the opportunity to to get a really solid degree, to thrive in a little bit of a smaller environment. I went to a very small Catholic high school in Connecticut and had been comfortable in a setting like that. What I also sort of liked about Bryant is the student radio program that I got involved with. As a high school 18-year-old kid, I said, wow, it'd be pretty cool just to screw around and have a radio show. Got involved with some of that. The folks at WJMF kind of took a chance and said, yeah, we'll put this freshman, we'll have him call play-by-play for a couple things, see what he can do. And then slowly that progressed. Actually, I think rather quickly, it progressed into working for the athletics department, getting on NEC front row, becoming the voice of the Bryant lacrosse team, which was sort of a shock to me as a sophomore. I had never seen a game of lacrosse in my life. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know, I knew people that played lacrosse, but I never picked up a lacrosse stick. So when the athletic department had reached out and said, hey, you're going to call play-by-play for all the lacrosse home games, I said, that's pretty funny. Let me know what I'm actually going to do. And they said, no, you're doing it. And that in 2017 was the year that Bryant won the Northeast Conference. They hosted an NCAA play-in game against Monmouth. They took Maryland, who won the national championship, and I'm pretty sure was undefeated that year too. They gave them some hardship at the end of that game. I think it was a 13-10 score in the first round of the tournament. So that was a really pivotal experience. I mean, to have that opportunity, it was no ESPN Plus, right? It wasn't in the age of streaming that we are now, but it laid the foundation and sort of helped me validate, some of this stuff actually is pretty cool. I would like to see, how far I can get into it. And sure enough, and things ended up working out.
Yeah, so like you said, just kickstarting that pathway with the student radio station, like those opportunities kind of opened, like they kind of just fell in your lap as the years went on, or was it like you had to keep applying, as far as getting these different like NEC front row and stuff like that? Because internships obviously go a long way too, that being in the industry as long as you have been. But like what types of internships did you do? Like, and like I said, like how did you get involved in so many different avenues at that college level?
Yeah, a lot of it was just reps, right? I think the big thing was not turning down reps. Missed a lot of weekends, right? Missed a lot of nights, when, can be doing stuff that college kids do. But I think a lot of it was, freshman, sophomore, junior year, and even to a degree now, you have to try not to say no to anything. And it's very tough. It's a drag sometimes when, a team is not great. They're not playing well. There's, the stories aren't good. They're just going out and showing non-competitive games. I think that's where you really learn, this is not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. I have been around great teams, right? I have still, with the Boston Bruins now, I've only ever done 2 games that they've lost. And just under a year, basically, right? So it helps so much when a team is good. When they're not good and it's a team you're not passionate about, your true colors start to show. I think at school and beyond, to reaching out to the different area schools around, I think that the connections I made up at UMass Lowell were during my time in school. Understanding okay, there's more out there than just the confines of your own, job title. Understanding how different shows work, how different productions work, different analysts, right? You're going to work with different personalities that give you more or give you less or give you, sort of something you haven't seen before. So I keep coming back to, I never had a formal internship of sorts. Just tried to say yes to a lot of different things.
Right. And for like somebody like me, when you were my age, I'm 20 years old, I'm a junior now. I guess kind of like segueing off of like what we were just talking about, like what advice would you give for somebody like me, like getting into the business, getting more experience, similar to what you were just talking about, like I said, when I like, what were your mindset like in the, you're kind of like, go abouts when you were 20 years old?
I keep coming back to that point about saying yes to everything. That's one.
Yeah.
I would say the other is there are a ton of different personalities in this business. There's a lot of ego. To a degree, I think some of it's justified. A lot of people have worked 20, 30 years to get where they are. They're very protective over sort of, hey, I have my spot in line. I've deserved this. I've made the right connections. So I feel, I deserve I deserve a chance at a role or a spot on the broadcast team or PA or whatever. I would say, something I try to do every day and something I wish I heard at 20 or 21 years old was to try to ditch that mentality as if anyone owes you anything, right? You just have to be a person that everybody likes to be around, right? Someone that walks in and, doesn't cause any problems, right? Doesn't make it a burden to work with them. That's something I've tried to do every stop of the way. It's like, hey, I'm cards on the table. It's not about me. You guys have your things to do. I'll be a part of it and I'll do what you want me to do. I wish I had heard that sooner, because there were times where I was 18, 19 years old thinking like, wow, I've done these many games in this environment, I'm entitled to all of this stuff. And I wish somebody slapped me in the face with that and said, no, you got to unlearn that real quick. That's something I can't stress enough. I wish I heard at that age.
Yeah, for me, like how it is now, like I just feel like I've had that same mindset. Like I'm not really, I don't feel like I'm entitled to anything, obviously, because like I'm a 20-year-old kid, but like it seems like it's like being in those environments is like this could be like a real thing. Like after college, like it's gonna start feeling real once you graduate. So like for you, like what was that first like feel like real moment where you were like, all right, I can start getting paid for this now?
My last weekend in college, everybody knows John Fanta. He's a great guy.
Yeah. Yep.
John and I have been friends for about 3-4 years now. He's a great dude. He approaches his work. Talk about a guy that shows up and does his homework and leaves his ego at the door. He's done a lot of cool stuff, but he's a very personable guy, which is what I respect the most about him. They were in a huge pinch for the Big East Track and Field Championships in 2019. My last weekend in school, he had put out something in our big, broad PA announcer Facebook group and said, hey, we're in a huge pinch. We need some help. And I threw my name in the ring and said, yeah, screw it. I'll miss my last weekend in college to go down and do a game at Randall's Island on, Icon Stadium, a big, beautiful track venue down there. I think I probably left campus around 5 a.m. to go make the drive from Rhode Island. Got to Randall's Island around 8 and spent my day there. And that was sort of the first time that I said, okay, this is real now. I just did for lack of a better term, a Power 5 conference championship. Yeah, it was track, right? It's a long day, not a lot of speaking, but that was where things started to become a little bit real. It's like I do this cards on the table again as a part-time sort of thing that keeps me busy, right? I've got a full-time job. I've got blessed enough to have a career that, I'm able to put some money away and save for the future and stuff like that. But the big question that I had when I left school is, am I cut out to just keep freelancing, right? Am I cut out to take this pretty far? And that sort of helped me answer the question of, yes, if you want this, you can have it. It comes with a lot of work, but that was that big turning point.
Yeah, for sure. And like going back to earlier, like we were saying, like all these opportunities coming in and everything like that, and you talk about it too, like bouncing all over the place, like that transition process. Like we talked about it earlier, like, one of your first official jobs I saw like on like your LinkedIn profile was with the Greenwich Cardinals, was at the high school level. And then like going on obviously to UMass Lowell, Sacred Heart, and doing stuff with Brian as well. Like I said, that transition process, was that ever like hard for you? Like, what's it like, do those schedules ever conflict, like working those same jobs at the same time?
Yeah, it's tough. And so it's something I do now, right? With a couple of roles that demand a lot, right? Working for the PLL, working with the Bruins, and then trying to stay pretty active on the college scene. It's tough, but it's a good lesson in prioritization. It's sort of a mix of what roles mean what to you, right? Down the road, I'd love to put myself in a position to be a PA announcer for some bigger events, right? Like I feel like everybody's North Star is March Madness or, the Super Bowl, like Alan Roach, who's made a career off of PA announcing. He does every Super Bowl, right? He does the Denver Broncos. He does the Colorado Avalanche, he does he actually flies up to Minnesota and does the Vikings from his little area in Denver. But he's doing all the Super Bowls, and you got a guy like Gene Honda who does every Final Four on the face of this earth, right? Like, it's all about what are my goals and what's going to help me get there, right? Part of that is maintaining relationships, right? If you are the guy that blows off every gig, are you going to get called back? Probably not. So it's about, being transparent with those folks. That's something that I've struggled with a lot. And I feel like, these past year or so I've been turning a corner in that area of, hey, I'm going to have less availability, but here's what I can do, right? It's about being transparent, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Like you were listing off a few PA announcers as well, like that do like those big events and stuff. Are you familiar with Tim Sinclair of the Chicago Bulls?
Yes, I am. He's an excellent PA guy. We had him on one of our first episodes of Beers, Business, and Balls back in the day, which is the podcast that my co-host Will and I have had for almost 3 years now.
Yeah.
And the tact he approaches his job with, the professionalism that he brings, and this guy brings it every single night. It's not, he's not screaming. He's, not going over the top, but he brings it. There's really no other way to say it. This guy's a pro's pro. He was one of the first guys when COVID hit to reach out to everybody and say, well, my schedule just freed up a bunch. And this is before he got the Bulls job too. Schedule freed up a bunch. Or it was before he got the Bears job, I should say. One of the two. He does about everything in Chicago that Gene Honda doesn't do. He said, the schedule just freed up a bunch. I'm trying to take some time to mentor some folks that are trying to make it. So reach out. And his DMs allegedly flooded. He gave me about an hour as a young 20. I don't even know. Was I 22 at the time? I don't know. But I think that also really shows you sort of who's who and who wants to make an impact long term in this industry. Tim's one of those guys. Yeah, for sure. Class act, 100%. Like I said, didn't think you'd take a shot in the dark and coming on my little small podcast, but he did, and it made a huge impact. But like I said, I was talking about the conflicting schedules, stuff that gets hard at times, something memorable to you that you could think of that was a really hard time, a hardship that you had to really conquer through throughout any positions that you've had so far. Yeah. Almost making you kind of second guess yourself, but in a way you still got past it, and then obviously you're where you're at now. Two come to mind. In 2021, early on, there was a week that I think it was one of those that I just had 7 games in 6 days or whatever it was, early in the year. And my voice basically locked up. My throat was totally shot. And it sounds really cliche and kind of stupid and silly, honestly, but it made me sort of question, wow, I'm really not cut out for this, right? That was sort of the first time that I had said, well, I want to be a professional PA announcer down the road. I better start acting like it now. That means, you can't go out and overextend your voice, at night or whatever. You got to be conscious about, are you drinking too much when you're going out, right? You have 9 billion cigars or something the night before. That's not going to work. But that was sort of a wake-up call, a hardship in a way, of, you want to be a pro, you got to act like it. So that was number one. I think the more recent one, and probably a more relatable one, was imposter syndrome. I got the call from the Bruins in March when Steve Forney, who preceded me as the Bruins PA announcer, just an incredible dude too. He got COVID. Tuukka Rask's retirement ceremony was on Thursday, March 31st of 2022. He was coming back. It was a whole big spectacle. The backup, John Dolan, who I've known for many years, a good friend of mine as well, he wasn't around. One thing leads to another. I get the phone call and, I'm doing the game. John says, hey, I told the Bruins you're free Thursday night. I said, well, I guess I'm free. Went in there, did a good enough job, I think, messed some stuff up. as everybody does in that sort of first time. Did some other things really well. I'm sure we'll talk about this. That one thing led to another down the road, get the role. And, what I've grappled with over the past year or so in different ways, shapes, or form are the inevitable notion of like, do I belong here? Right? Does a 25-year-old kid belong in the pros? Right? But what I've learned from folks that, a lot of PA announcers had that same problem, and a lot of folks in the broadcast industry too. Often it involves taking a chance on somebody that, they're not necessarily as quote unquote experienced, right? They're not 30-year veterans of the industry, but you take a gamble on people who you think might have the guts for it, right? So it's something I struggled with to a lesser degree now of like, that nagging voice of like, hey, do I belong here in this industry, right? Do I belong in this seat that thousands of other people want? It's inevitable in sports, but you sort of have to coach yourself to get a bit more confidence in that regard, right? To understand like, hey, I'm believed in by somebody, right? Even if it's just a small group of people, like, enough people believe in me that they're giving me XYZ opportunity. And that's a good example of life in general too, right? My day job, I'm a product manager. The folks on my team, not to be ageist here, but they're, 15, 20 years older than me. Different walks of life and different experiences, but it's a very good point to understand like, hey, I bring something different and a value to the table. And I think it's a really good life lesson that I'm sort of trying to relearn for myself.
Yeah, for sure. And was that how the job for the Bruins like initially came to you, like all, that whole process?
Yes. So to dive a bit more into that, filled in for Steve, kept in touch with the folks at the Bruins. Steve was in a really tough situation. He was commuting in from Agawam, Massachusetts. And Steve has two younger kids. He's got a beautiful family. He's got, a great job doing what he loves as a teacher out there. And he had realized like, this, I think his quote was, I can't raise my kids on the Mass Pike. Right. So, Steve made a really tough decision that a lot of people in sports, dread making, right? And it's, what's important to me in my life, right? So, Steve's been a great mentor of mine now. So that's Steve Forney, by the way. A great mentor, he'll send a text every now and then and say, hey, you killed it, or, have fun tonight. And that means a lot, as the guy that preceded me. So over the summer, he stepped down, and, the folks at the Bruins have reached out and said, hey, do you want to be a candidate for more reps? And said, yes, would love to be considered for sure. Originally it was, hey, let's give you the preseason. Let's see how you do. Let's make sure you get adjusted. We want to make sure you're the right candidate. Toyed around with some things. Hockey is a very unique sport to PA announce because there's a certain cadence to it. Things are expected to be delivered in a certain way. There's outrage on Twitter right now about why PA announcers take so long to announce goals. I don't think people understand how much goes into it with the off-ice officials needing to review everything. That was something coming from basketball primarily and lacrosse, which I'm doing now. It's like, it's right in front of you, just announce it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's sort of that grow up moment as well. It's like, hey, it's not as easy as it looks anymore. So got a lot of those nuances out of the way. And, sure enough, with more reps, I thought my rhythm personally just kept clicking, right? So a couple more regular season games get released, and, next thing you know, I'm sitting in the chair. So it's been a wild ride. The folks at the Bruins are fantastic. Love working with them. We have a fun time. It's and it helps that the team is 37-5-4, I think too. That's on some historic pace, which is like, it's such a great time to be there.
For sure. And obviously, like, a job like that, it's like, you can't even put into words how it makes you feel, to be honored with that kind of position. But I haven't asked you yet, like, how exciting, all these jobs as a whole, how exciting have they been over the years? And, like, obviously now, looking down at like future, like, Hall of Famers and like Marchand and like Patrice Bergeron, like just being able to call their names out when something happens, and even like starting lineups, like, how does that make you feel, as a professional now?
Yeah, it's kind of wild because it's yeah, I keep coming back to a quote that David Krejci said when he played his 1000th game the other day. They asked him like, "Hey, how's this 1000th game feel?" And he sort of paused for 10 seconds, and he's like, it's one of those things that I'm going to appreciate later, right?
Yeah.
That it's a great honor now, but I'm going to look back at this moment and 3-4 years, whenever he hangs up the cleats, who knows, could be 10 at this rate with the longevity that Bruins players have. And sort of what I keep coming back to as well, in the moment, it's showing up for work. It's reading the lineups. It's reading that, Brad Marchand scored a goal. I'm going to look back at that when Bergeron inevitably retires, whether it's next year or however long, if he keeps coming back on these 1-year deals. That'll be something that, I hope to show my kids, down the road, like, hey, how cool is this? That your dad got to announce Bergeron's 1000th game or 1000th point ceremony. It's something I take a lot of pride in. I understand that, it's I am the lowest person in the totem pole in the situation like that, but it'll be something I look back at really fondly when inevitably that time does come.
Yeah, for sure. And before the Bruins and even now too, did you ever get do you ever have pre-game jitters before the game starts, or is there anything you do a pre-game ritual like players or something like that?
So the short answer is yes. I was an actor back in the day. And there, I think that was my first introduction to performing. I was, not to toot my own horn, I thought I was a pretty good actor, as a middle schooler. I never carried it on into high school and stuff like that, but I knew I wanted to do something in that realm of, maybe it was music, maybe it was performing, something like that. And I feel like that ended up being my creative outlet. That being said, those jitters are still real, right? It's never like a scared of screwing up jitter, but it's always the moment's always back there. It's, hey, your eyes are, people's eyes and ears are going to be on you, right? And that's the same for any broadcast, broadcast the games on Nesson and like yourself, ESPN Plus, and a couple games on regional cable TV. And it's the same sort of thing. It's like, you can either let that eat you up. There's 20,000 people down here. Wonder what's going to happen. And the same with TV. It's like, I'm just speaking, to whoever, there's so many people watching. Or you can just try to have some fun. And you can say, this is fun. This is doing what I love to do. I'm just going to do my thing, and whatever happens, happens. So it's always the jitters of meeting the moment. It's, am I going to bring it enough energy tonight with this crowd? Against when the Bruins played Toronto the other night, I sort of had it a little bit more than I'd really ever had. It was wow. This is a Toronto effing Maple Leafs. If you don't bring it, that's a huge missed opportunity, right? So you give it a little more gusto. You try to meet that moment where it is. As far as your pregame ritual question, what I've been trying to do is the breathing more, right? When I had my voice problems back in 2021, that was a big thing for me. Ended up seeing a speech pathologist for a while to understand, hey, how can I maximize my voice, and how can I not strain it? How can I make sure this voice is going to be around when I'm 50? And a lot of it was diaphragmatic breathing, right? So I'll sort of just maybe take a second every now and then, close my eyes, and make sure I'm focused on am I present in the moment, and am I giving my brain and my body enough oxygen, all that nerdy stuff. So it's been, I still have ways to go in establishing that pregame ritual, but that's where I'm at.
Right. And is it I always like to ask people this too, or not people, but public address announcers and specifically finding your voice. Did you have to find your voice, or did you just felt like you had that naturally in you, when you first obviously started?
I think it's a mix of both, because obviously you don't wake up and, you don't come out of the womb with I would like some cereal, right? You don't, that's just not what you do. So I think that's another big struggle. It's when I first started, my first PA role specifically was for Bryant men's basketball. Tim O'Shea had just retired. Jared Grosso came in. They put new seats in the Chase Athletic Center. There was just a new buzz in there, and they wanted a new voice. Marketing people had reached out and said, hey, any of your friends want to do this? I said, no, my friends don't. I do. This is my dream. Like, let me figure this out. So part of finding your voice was finding out who you're not, right? Like, I feel like as a kid, as a 21-year-old kid, I was just trying to be too many people that I looked up to. Like when I was doing basketball, I had a bit of Mike Walczewski in me, I thought. He's a Knicks public address announcer.
Yeah.
And finally, like I looked at my voice recordings from 2019 the other day. I'm like, that's not me. Come on. What am I doing? I can't go 3-point ball, Carmelo Anthony. I can't do that shit, So you have to find it, in my opinion. I think you need to know what works and what doesn't, right? It's so obvious when somebody's overdoing it or somebody's yelling or growling or screaming or whatever it is. There's wrong ways to do this, but I think the only way to do it is just to learn, right? It's to screw around with stuff and see what works.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it's tough too, like, because all the things you've been doing, like, it's like, you look back at it, it's like, wow, I did this, like, there's so many things that you've been a part of. If you could think of, I always ask everyone this question too, the most memorable moment you can think of in your career so far. Obviously, being the public address announcer for the Bruins is pretty memorable, but I mean, if there's something that really sticks out to you, like, wow, like maybe like an interaction with the player, like, have you ever had interactions with players like that, like with the Bruins so far? Or
not really with the Bruins. I think, I'm up in the 9th floor. I'm not in the down in the box, right? So I think, sadly, that opportunity won't really present itself to me. It would be awesome, right? Who's complaining about that? But I understand the realities of the situation there. As far as memorable moments go, I would say Bryant winning the NEC championship last year. I mean, I'm sure you might have remembered this if you followed it, and the listeners, the events there, the fight in the stands, that was one thing, right? If you had asked me if I thought I'd be controlling the crowd that night on ESPN, it was not on my list. But afterwards, sharing that moment of, just total like, wow, Bryant just won. Finally, they won their conference with the folks next to me, right? So like Bill Pike, who's been the official scorer for 14 years at Bryant. Him and I have seen a lot of bad basketball together. We've seen some bad teams come in that gym. Some of them were Bryant, right? Let's make no mistake. Bryant had some bad losses over the years in that gym. They went 3-28 in 2017 to 18. To share that moment of joy, I gave him a hug. He's, for a guy that's like, I don't know, not to put an age number on him, but like 40 or 50 years older than me, for us to have that moment, I thought was awesome, right? And with all the staff at Bryant too, on the table that I'd grown to know so well over the years, I thought that rose right to the top of my list. And I would say the PLL championship of 2021 too, I thought was really cool. First time finishing a tour with a pro league. And I thought that was awesome to have my little slice of it and say, I just proved to myself, I went to 3 tour stops in 2021, and I proved to myself that I can get here, get to this level, sort of build with the PLL as well. To have Paul Rabel and Mike Rabel, the relationship that we do with them, I think that rises right to the list, right to the top of the list as well. Awesome stuff.
yeah, right. And lastly, like, wrap up everything that we've been talking about. What's your goal at the end of the day? I mean, you've been able to do this now for about 8 years. You host a podcast as well, and you have your day job as well, like you were mentioning. Like, what's the plan going forward? Where do you see yourself in the future?
I'd love to ride it out with the Bruins, God willing. There's a fit. I'll be there if there's a fit. They know that. But down the road, I think that North Star, it's like, let's see where this road goes, right? Let's see if I can do a couple March Madness games, right? Let's see, Fallon Roach decides to hang up the cleats, like, hey, I'll throw my name in the ring, right? So there's a lot available. And I think when people ask what's next, I'm like, well, I don't really know. And I'm trying to, be more intentional about it too, right? Like, say, here's exactly where I want to go. But, right now I'm in sort of the period of my life that I'm just going to try to have some fun, right? Really enjoy the work that I'm doing for the groups that I'm doing it for, and we'll see where this thing goes.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, Jake. I mean, it means a lot for you to take the time and chat with me about your career. I want to just wrap up again, like I said, just what'd you think of Cam's Corner? What'd you think of the questions? Who much you want to see to in the future as a guest?
What do I want to see in the future? Man, a lot of good stuff. Keep asking the tough questions. Keep asking.
I try. It takes me a little bit. It takes me a little bit to cook up questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep asking stuff that I would say normally would like make people uncomfortable, right? Like ask the really hard questions that people are going to have to think about. And that's how you learn, right? You get people to talk about some really not taboo, but some answers that or some questions that aren't concrete necessarily, and you'll get some good stuff.
Gotcha, Jake. I appreciate it. And I'll definitely be in touch. Definitely glad that we connected.
Yeah. Text me if you need anything. If there's someone you want to get in touch with that I know or whatever, a school you want to get in contact with, definitely hit me up, man, for sure.
Gotcha, man. I'll definitely be in contact. I appreciate it again, man. I'll talk to you soon for sure.
Yeah. Take care, man.